To thank Eileen for pulling all this together. You're out there. We want to thank 701. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to say our goodbyes. Thank you. We want to thank 701 Center for Contemporary Arts for pulling this together. We all know that a huge chunk of Wim's heart and life resided there. Of course, If Art Gallery, and us. We're going to have some speakers come up today and tell some, I'm sure, very funny, very poignant, slightly embarrassing stories. But Wim, I know it sounds corny, but it's true. One of the things I do is I'm a storyteller. Wim resides in all of us, his stories. One of my stories with Wim is he gave my daughter, Zaire, her very first one-woman art show at the tender age of 6. And we had a great night. Thank you, Wim. Thank you, Eileen. We had a great night, and it's still legendary in our family. And I know a lot of you have those stories. So we don't have to contain this to just the speakers who are here. We all have these stories. Professional, personal, we all have these stories. And sometimes in some of them, Wim actually even loses the argument. So, I'm gonna get out the way and let our first speaker come up. Her name is Lynn Robertson. She has been the executive director and curator of the McKissick Museum here at the University of South Carolina. She's the current board chair of 701 Center for Contemporary Art. So, Lynn, your turn.
Well, as Darion said, I'm Lynn Robertson. I think I probably know most of the people in this room. And we're all here together as one wonderful family because we wanted to share the stories together and to share our delight in having experienced some part of our life with Wim. But I also get to do the formal part for the afternoon. And as the current head of the board of directors of 701 CCA, which I'll take a little aside, and that is that I took it over with incredible trepidation because Wim had been not only the founder of 701 CCA with a number of other people, but he had served for many years as the executive director, not the executive director, but the chair of the board, and shaped, through good times and bad times, the exhibition program and our outreach. But so officially I'm a part of the board of directors of 701 CCA, our executive director, our committee of advisors, but most of all to Eileen, who was so much an important part of all of this today. Today I want to thank all of my colleagues. We came early this morning to put this together. There are too many to acknowledge. But also I wanted to thank a few people specifically, Tim Daisy and his trio, Wade Seller, yes. And all of these people were they wanted to do something. They wanted to celebrate women in some way. Wade Sellers and Cole Howard Filmworks, who's worked with 701 CCA before and whose work we've exhibited. Adam Vance with Sound and Image. Eric Duncan and Kat Hunter, whose products you can sample over there quite deliciously, who are providing the bartending services for us. But this is a glorious celebration, a celebration of a man who knew how to live life to the fullest, a man who we probably thought we knew until we read his obituary, and then for my case, I had no idea he founded a punk band. As well as started his adulthood grafting roses. But most of all, it's a celebration where we each can mix and mingle and share these wonderful stories we had of WEM. My experience with him has been with 701 CCA, which he lured me on the board by one day when I was in the gallery saying, we just go down to Starbucks and have a coffee. I know you like coffee. And I should have known then, for him to close the gallery for 20 minutes, something was going to happen. So he lured me onto the board, and it's been a wonderful service. But most of all, because WEM's view of what the arts should be in this community involved a meeting of artists and of also the general public. So many arts organizations are very focused on what's the exhibition, how are we going to get people in the gallery. But WEM's approach to the arts was that it's a dynamic relationship between artists and the art produced and our experience of the art, and that any organization owed to the artist support, mentorship, any way that we could further enrich the life of artists in our community throughout the state and the region and certainly internationally. So that was something that's very different about this organization. And the other thing is, of course, give art. I think everybody in this room at one time or another has strolled into the gallery and found artists you didn't know, things that were interesting, and we could tell you all about them. I had many conversations about the artists I didn't know, who now many of them are hanging on my wall at home. But that's the thing I appreciated about him, that he felt that the arts and artists for any community was really a vital aspect of making a place better for all of us to live. More adventuresome, more enriching, more open, more diverse. And so he has left an incredible hole in this city in terms of the arts and their vibrancy. And I think it's up to all of us to carry what he found that was so important about the artistic expression, for all of us to remember in terms of our dealings with the city and the county and with each other and organizations, that the arts really matter to all of us. So to my friend, I say thank you for what you gave to my life, and for the city, I say thank you for what you gave to the city of Columbia. So thank you for coming today. And let's all share our stories with each other. Thank you.
I'm sure as you've all figured out, recurring theme all day is going to be the multi-faces of women. Just look in this room. They're visual artists, they're dancers, they're journalists, they're curators, arts administrators, collectors, makers of all sorts, children, adults, well, and some adults who think they're children, and all kind of good stuff in here. And one of the things I did not know about one so much, even though we had talked about it and running conversations back in my head, he was kind of dropping the pearls all the time, was his academic ventures, his more academic experience. And I'm sure those were some doozies as far as what's good and what's not, and oh, I would pay for some of those. But we have here Ben Van Raaij. Ben is a reporter covering international news for, Ben, I'm not going to disrespect your paper and mispronounce the word, but it's the newspaper in Amsterdam. He studied Dutch and social economic history with Wim at the university in the Netherlands. Ben, I'm going to let you clean up my clumsiness, but come and talk to us about our friend Wim.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear friends of Wim, I'm very happy to see so many American friends here gathered in this memory and in celebration of his memory. But there are also friends that are not present here, and some of them I represent. And they live in the Netherlands, where Wim originated, and so I speak on behalf of them, so that part of his being is also cherished here. Eileen asked me to say a few words about Wim's early academic career in the Netherlands. I know a bit about that because he and I started out as students of history at Radboud University in the same year, 1977. I still remember noticing him the very first day. He was already then the kind of guy that stuck out in the crowd. And somehow he reached out to me. So let me briefly take you back to those late 70s and early 80s, which were dark times of economic crisis, of punk music, and also of no future. But in our case, they were also the time of innocence and trust, and when we were still able to dream big. Like many students, Wim quickly became disenchanted with our studies, in particular the historical narrative of great white men, dead white men. We were taught at what was at that point still a very traditional Catholic university. He found the approach dull, unimaginative, and completely wrong. And he would tell his professors so. He was already then a guy who frankly spoke his mind, dressed in a jeans jacket. I saw it on one of the pictures. His long hair, his moustache at the time, sitting on top of the table with his boots on the chair in front of him. And many staff members were really intimidated. We all started out searching for something better and found it at first in social and economic history, which is a discipline which focuses on structural causalities and long-term trends in history, in economics, social relations, and ideology. And after that, we ventured into Marxist theory, which we tackled in student groups that we organized ourselves outside the regular curriculum. We did not spend too much energy on our regular assignments. Wim wrote them at the very last moment, normally, trusting on his wit. He was always totally confident that this would suffice, which I need not tell you invariably was the case. In Marxism, theory is irrelevant without practice. So we soon started to explore politics. As kids from often privileged backgrounds, with no experience of real social struggle, this boiled down to student activism, mainly against attempts to restructure the curriculum in a more business-friendly way. In response, we founded a new student union and occupied the university several times. And Wim, of course, with his charisma and social skills, was one of the natural leaders. And I remember how he opened the doors of the staff's rooms and told them bluntly, "This apartment is occupied, get lost." In spite of all this activism, we were also involved in squatter riots at the time. Wim was already contemplating his later career. He did not want to become a history teacher or a scholar. He wanted to be relevant. And so he chose journalism and took matters in his own hands. And together with a few friends, he started a small newspaper, the Nijmeegse Stadskrant, the Nijmegen city paper, that brought local news for local people for free and was totally run by volunteers. All the contributors, they came and went in and out, but Wim was the one that kept doggedly going, mastering the tricks of professional journalism along the way. And it's mainly thanks to him that this Stadskrant evolved into a professional medium that flourished for several years before inevitably succumbing to an eternal lack of funds. Meanwhile, it became clear that to all of us that Wim was pursuing a life and career of his own at the crossroads of journalism, political science and history that would make a difference in the real world. He decided to study abroad, first Northern Ireland, then the United States, and started to accomplish this at a time when studying abroad, in the Netherlands at least, was not the common career step that it is today. He himself thought nothing of it. He could not imagine why anyone would not be impressed. "You just have to do it," he said. Looking back now, so many years later and half a world away, in this great arts center he helped create, it's easy to see how the foundations of what Wim accomplished, in my perception, in his life, were already present in his student days. It was in Nijmegen that he developed the critical mind, the organizational and social skills, and the thirst for excellence that so characterized his work. At the time, no one of us would have guessed those assets would help him build himself a career in the art world, and least of all the art world in Columbia, South Carolina. Although Wim would say, why not? You just have faith in yourself and do it. And I guess that is his life lesson for all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. Next we have Tom Crick. Tom is the Associate Director of the Conflict Resolution Program at the Carter Center in Atlanta. Tom is here to tell us about Wim's life in Belfast. Wim was a man who took up a lot of area geographically. Belfast in Northern Ireland, where the two of them met and when they attended Queen's University in the mid-1980s. I'm sure this is going to be good. Tom?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Darion. Thank you, Eileen, for the honor of allowing me to speak about my dear friend Wim, who I've known for 35 years. He was my best man. He was my savior at many times. And I got through that part, so we'll get through the rest. And I'm very glad to meet my friend from the Netherlands, because I don't know very many Dutch people. And Wim can certainly skew your view of the nation. And yes, he had in Belfast too, he had his boots on the desk. He had his battered green leather jacket. He had an objection to sleeves on his t-shirts. He came to Ireland and thought he could out-argue the Irish on the matter of history, in which he was taking a master's degree. And so it's refreshing and reassuring to see another side of that great nation. Before I met Wim, I had heard of Wim, and this was in sort of early interviews with some of the professors there. And I was just asking, well, who else is in this course? There was only about 10 of us, I think, and they singled out and said, oh, there's this Dutch guy. I said, oh yeah. He said, he's written a book about us, they said. And so I said, oh, I said, yeah. He knows. And so that, that was their way of putting, he lived in it was a bit of a fish bubble, Belfast. And a lot of voyeurs would come over and to see the troubles and go home. But as I learned, and after I met Wim, and I learned even more having talked to his dear friend Jim Donnelly, who spent years in Belfast with Wim before I met him. Wim had come over to Belfast as a journalist. and had, somehow made the right connection, somehow made his mark, had been serious, and indeed had not left. That he spent 6 summers there, must have been in his early 20s, working in some of the toughest parts of Belfast, with a summer youth scheme called the Alliance Ardoin, where he was a role model and a youth worker in a culture where the men would typically go to work, go to the pub, go home. Women was out playing with their kids through the summer, kids from the Protestant and Catholic communities, and setting an example for them. Learning how to be a bridge builder, learning that even with the opinions and the values that he carried everywhere with him on his sleeve up front, he could still bring people together, and that's a real skill, and Wynne was natural in that. Many of his friends there remember all the arguments, they remember all the pints, they remember what they call the crack. Wynne was a laugh, somebody said, high praise indeed in a place that only has laughter to keep itself going. He made his transition eventually from Belfast to Columbia. He met a student from the University of South Carolina who was also on the course. And she said, well, we've got a great journalism school here, and he applied, and he landed, and he brought everything that he had from his childhood, he had from his early studies, and he brought it here. And it turned into, as he said, who knew, channeled into fine arts and community building here in that way. I should say that we are heartbroken that Wynne is not with us here today. But were he with us, he would not be with us. And what I mean by that is the scheduling of this event coincides with the climax of the English Premier League season. Imagine the last 20 minutes of the Super Bowl. Teams that you care about, and you're up here on the stand talking about the person you used to text with who would abuse my team endlessly. He was an Ajax fan, he was one that acknowledged. I'm an Arsenal fan, and I would like that acknowledged also. But Wynne will live with me forever. His art is on my walls, his pictures in my house, and we miss him. So.
Okay, so next we have Dr. Kevin Karaja. He's a professor of journalism and mass communications at Suffolk University in Boston. Kevin is a Fulbright Scholarship winner who teaches courses on media criticism, visual aesthetics, and the way the internet is influencing public discussion. Man, I just wish I could have been in that room. Y'all know that was good. Kevin knows about Wynne's academic work in the field of mass communication and research. And you got to, yeah. Thank you.
First of all, I have to begin this way. Wynne was deeply unimpressed with my PhD. So we should start with that. And that Fulbright scholarship, no big deal. I heard Wynne's voice last night, and he said, Kevin, you got to get this right. In no uncertain terms. No cliches. Right? He told me, whatever you do, God, don't speak about God. So, God's out. All right? I'll speak about Wim as an academic who contributed to several disciplines: journalism, media studies, and history. I begin with a story about Wim because he loves stories. I taught a night course. I come home from work. My wife's on the phone, my wife Ellen, and I'm certain she's on the phone with this longtime friend. The conversation goes a half an hour. She's laughing hysterically. She says, "Kevin, the call's for you." And I say, "Who's it from?" And she says, "Wim Roefs. He's read your research." And I say, "Who the hell is Wim Roefs?" And then a conversation followed that lasted long time. And he asked about my research. He didn't ask, really. He really critiqued my research on social movements, the news media, the solidarity movement in Poland. Wim's academic work connected to other passions in his life. He loved ideas, fierce debates, and well-crafted, evocatively written arguments. In Boston terms, he was, I'm going to try for this, ready? Wicked smart. I've lived in Boston for decades, but I'm a proud New Yorker. And New Yorkers love their bluntness. They love that they're opinionated, and their willingness to argue. Therefore, I'm certain, this is certain, I'm going to make a claim, and I know his Dutch friends might disagree. His family farm was not in the Netherlands. It was along the Kildan Cove in New York City. Why is this true? Well, the range and depth of his opinions, right, were simply breathtaking. I love to argue with him. He believes I lost every single one of those arguments. Wim epitomized Gramsci's conception of an organic intellectual. Ideas matter, but if you're intellectual, you have to be an engaged intellectual. And he was an engaged intellectual. His scholarship revealed his passion for politics, his commitment to building the beloved community. And there was no time to waste in building the beloved community. Therefore, he had no patience for academic pomposity and smugness. In fairness, Wim had no patience for a lot of things. We disagreed about many, many things, but we were in full agreement about the following thing. And by the way, if there are other academics in the party, I'm sorry, but most academics are deadly boring. He laughed when I told him that my family has better times at wakes than most academics have at weddings. He had took joy in eviscerating, by the way, Wim would be very happy that I use that word, eviscerating poorly argued papers at academic conferences. We took joy in fleeing boring academic parties to find a dive bar playing jazz and argue with him deep into the night. His research grappled with big issues. Who had power? How did they exercise it? How did people, particularly from historically disenfranchised groups, resist and overcome oppression? He loved to study those who fought the good fight. He studied the African American civil rights movement in South Carolina, critiquing historians who neglected the continuities between black activism in the 1940s and 1960s. We published an influential study on the interaction between progressive social movements and the news media, focusing on how these movements create significant political change, despite the power inequalities they confront. I learned a hell of a lot about the European left from Wim. For example, we traded endless stories about the Spanish Civil War. I remember lengthy discussions late at night in Madrid with Wim and Eileen on the differences in the Spanish left in the 1930s between anarchists, socialists, communists, and Pamistas. I told Wim I read a book by a Dutch communist, Jeff Last, who fought for the Spanish Republic. Well, of course, Wim knew all about Jeff Last. And we were forced, I was forced, I have to admit it, I didn't want to do it, to drink even more wine than I had previously. We stayed later than the Spaniards did. They had already gone home. And staying late than the Spanish, that's like a very hard thing to do. I want to tell you that. Okay. We also did a successful quest to drink at every bar in Madrid that Ernest Hemingway had frequented. And we succeeded, and Wim and I argued about the quality of Hemingway's fiction and journalism. As a journalist, Wim covered the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and as an activist in Boston, I have many Irish friends. I've experienced the joy of many nights of good crack. By the way, the second time the word crack has been used, an Irish word for good conversation. With Wim, the crack was passionate, it was broad, it was deep. With Wim, the crack was pointed and playful. With Wim, the crack went deep into the night. With Wim, the crack was filled with laughter, and by Wim's judicious use of English obscenity. He said we had the best curse words in the world. Right? The crack was sustained by good food and drink. The crack kept you on your toes. You had to be at your best or you would lose. And I hate to lose an argument. To paraphrase Hemingway, the crack was true and it was good. Now Wim lives in the crack in the stories we tell about him. So when I returned to Boston, over good beer and good bourbon in an Irish pub, by the way, I can't play Irish music because he hated it, all right? But nonetheless, over good beer and good bourbon, there'll be much good crack with Ellen, with my daughter Maura, and with my Irish friends about my beloved friend, Wim. Thank you.
All right, I told you it would be brief, too short and too small for, and I use the word purposely, giant. All we have to do is look around this room and we see his imprint. We see his footsteps. But I was telling Michaela this the other day, one of the cool things, these celebrations of life, these tributes, these memorials are always kind of weird. They're kind of dangling in that weird space where, you know, we mourn the loss of our good friend, but we celebrate that life, man, that we were all so lucky to be part of. So now, I think one of the cool things is that it was a life that we got to be part of. It was a life worthy of celebration. And celebration doesn't start here. Of course it goes on with the rest of us. With his artwork, with his advocacy, with his presence, with how many times we say, you know what Wim would have said. Yeah. So, the thing I think I admire most about Wim, we have an expression in my family. We call personalities like Wim, we call them the salty marshmallow. And Wim was one of the saltiest marshmallows I've ever known. And that's because he was about people, man. He was about us. He's about the people. So, later on today or right now, whatever you want to do, raise one up for Wim. And I'm getting a look from my better half. Okay, y'all giving me the hook? I get fired from the gig and I'm even done? Come on up here, Michaela Pilar-Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so pleased to see you all here. Y'all know I love women, and it's good to see that love in the room. And because I'm smaller than everyone else, Harriet is telling me to step from behind the podium. We were going to be graced this afternoon with Dr. Leo Twiggs, but true to form, the people in WIM Circle are always spectacular. And Dr. Twiggs today is receiving an honorary doctorate from Wofford College and will not make it. So we need to give it up for Dr. Twiggs. And for the brilliance that regularly surrounded WIM. You know, he was like this light that drew us all in. He was the biggest advocate you'd ever find for artists. If he believed in you, nobody would shout your praises higher. Nobody would pull for you, create opportunities for you, push you. And he held us all to a higher standard. You know, women didn't tolerate a lot of BS, right? He would hold your feet to the fire if he thought you had more to give. If he thought he could draw it out of you. He pushed and pushed and pushed. Enough to frustrate a number of us in this room, I'm sure. Right? We all have those moments when we tired of WIM. Pushing and pushing and pushing. But we were all better for it. Nobody believed in you more than WIM if he believed in you. And nobody expected more of you. He wanted the best from all of us. He thought this could be the best community in the world, and he pushed for that. He pushed for that in his actions daily. He pushed for that in how he brought community together. He pushed for that in how he pulled us all to pull for each other. WIM would show up. WIM was the kind of person you wanted in the fight. You knew he had your back. And he would go for it. He would protect you. He would fight for you. And he fought for this community. He fought for this community to have good, honest politics. He saw a lie, he called it out. He didn't believe in being polite about it. If he could ruffle feathers, if it would bring the truth, he ruffled those feathers. If he saw remarkable art, he brought light to it. And even if he thought you weren't up to par, like you weren't the right speed for his space, he wouldn't choose you for his gallery, that didn't mean he wasn't pulling for you. I can't tell you how many times I saw him regularly doing studio visits with younger artists who weren't quite ready. But WIM was there, pushing, 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 bringing you there. Bringing you right to where you needed to be to get ready for that next moment of your life. He believed in greatness, and he thought we all had it in us. And he did everything he could to pull it out. I will miss my friend more than you can imagine. I just didn't imagine this day would come so quickly. This is a man who showed up for me in my professional life and in my personal life. He was a true friend. If he believed in you, if he loved you, you knew it. It wasn't something you ever had to worry or wonder about. And I feel a little lost today. I wonder what will happen to all of the people and places and organizations that he put his foot behind. Is there someone to step into the fray? Will you all step up? Step up and do what he did? There's a big void in this community and we're going to need to fill it. And if we honor him at all, we will fill it. We will do what we need to do. I thank you all for coming out to honor our good friend Lynn. Eileen, we love you. Where are you? We love you. And we're here for you. So if you have a drink, raise a toast. If you feel like your voice is clear, shout out. Let's give it up for Lynn.
And with that, bring bring today's proceedings to a close with love, with thanks for the artwork from Eileen and Williams' collection. Thank you. For Richard Burks and the 701 Whately staff, thank you. For all the teams, of all the people who made this possible, thank you. For all of you for taking this bit of your life and sharing it with us about our friend, for our friend, and with our friend. Thank you. You guys be safe.